Well, hello again, dear ones. So grateful to be with you today on this glorious July morning. It is July 5th, 2026. It is the month of freedom. And I'm so grateful to be with you and share some thoughts around this 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It was 250 years ago this month that a small group of people made a decision and a document that followed. And while signatories, for the most part, signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, many didn't sign. Many needed time to look at what was on that piece of paper, to consider how it would chart the course of this fledgling nation. Some didn't even sign until August of 1776. But what happened in that room and what happened during that time was already a done deal. Freedom was already real. It was already a settled deal. But it wasn't always visible to everyone else. The founding fathers of this country did not create freedom. They were standing in it. They were experiencing it, and they were doing their very best to declare that freedom in a way that would, well, it would appear has survived 250 years. And I believe they were well aware that what they were doing would be called treason. And this weekend and this month, we celebrate their courage and we celebrate their faith that freedom is real. And as America has it, we would repeat that experience a slightly different way. It was January of 1863 when the Emancipation Proclamation declared freedom for people of color. And as we learned last month, word didn't reach the people of Galveston, Texas until over 2 years later. June of 65. 2.5 years from the time they were free to the time that they demonstrated that freedom. The freedom was already true. It was already law. It was real. It just wasn't known. This month, as we celebrate our American freedom, I ask us to not forget that sometimes we don't recognize how free we really are. Sometimes what we have to declare needs a little time for the world to catch up. Science of Mind and New Thought has been declaring for decades a sense of truth, a sense of freedom, that sometimes it takes a while for the world to catch up. Throughout both of these experiences, I'd like us to focus in on the word self-evident. If you look that up in the dictionary, the definition includes things like no argument needed, no committee vote necessary, there's no outside permission. And the founding fathers used the word self-evident about liberty, about freedom. I'm going to invite us to use it about ourselves today. I have something fun to share with you, but that'll have to wait for just a moment or two. And I want you to remember, and I want to remind you that your worth, your creative power, your capacity to start over is self-evident. You don't have to earn any of that or prove it. You are worthy simply because you're here on the planet. It's what the science of mind teaches us. Holmes also taught that the law, that universal creative law, reflects back to us what we put forward. It's not a power that punishes or a power that rewards. We often say it in rooms like this that the divine is no respecter of persons. It doesn't have a sense of respect for what you've done and therefore you should be rewarded. It doesn't have a sense that you're a bad person and therefore should be punished. The universe, the divine, the power, the presence, the intelligence says yes. So whatever is inside us, whatever we believe, whatever we hold to be self-evident, gets mirrored back to us. I like to remind myself every morning, sometime between the time my eyes open up and my feet hit the floor, that today's going to be another great day in a long series of really, really great days. The proof of that, well, some days it catches up with me. The proof of that reminder sometimes doesn't appear to be catching up with me. Some days don't feel like that, or something happens and we start to think that it's not a good day. There's even a great little story about it being a rotten, no good, very horrible day. But what I invite you to do this month is to practice reminding yourself that every day is another great day in a long series of really great days. We don't earn our truth. We don't earn our worth by simply writing it down on a piece of paper. We don't have to earn it. It's self-evident. Over the last couple months, last month now, I guess, you've heard some snippets of a story of Laura and I finding our now home, our current home. And you may have heard some snippets of some other stories because she and I have a very long, long history of declaring a new home when we need it, whether there's evidence for that or not. And sometimes it's felt like a last minute miracle. Sometimes finding our next home feels like it's taking a little longer than we would like. And that's kind of what happened with this last go around. We knew way back in February that we would not be renewing the lease on our home at the end of May. And we knew that we had a specific amount of time to pack everything up. And, being the guy in the house, I kept putting it off and putting it off. Well, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. If you ask me to do something, you don't have to remind me every 6 months. I'll get to it. And when the beginning of May came around, well, the housing market looked a little tight. It felt like there was not an awful lot of inventory, and there were an awful lot of places that didn't fit what we really wanted. And over time, we began to declare exactly what we did want. Now, one of the things we didn't want, well, we didn't want to be in an apartment building. And we looked at a few of those. Luxury apartments with all the latest gadgetry and swimming pools and workout rooms and spas right in the building. But that wasn't what we wanted. See, we've been for a long time, we rent from people. And the house before this one was actually managed through a management company. And while it was an okay experience, we prefer to be able to work with people rather than companies, or now big investment firms. And what we were running into was almost exclusively management companies and investment firms. They all felt rather overpriced and they all felt over restrictive. And we were working diligently in our prayer work that we want to rent from a homeowner, a husband and wife, or a family that was making their way in the world through renting and being landlords. And as we became more and more clear about what we really wanted, well, the choices became fewer and fewer. However, one day I saw a listing and I called on the phone, and wouldn't you know it, a woman called me back about 20 minutes later. Something in my name, it was the SKI at the end, drew her attention. And I went to see her. I went to tour the home, and Laura couldn't be with me, and it would do. It would work. She was excited to have us rent the house. We needed a little bit of time, and in the midst of that time, we found another place on the internet and a listing that looked really good. And coming home from the supermarket one evening, I said, hey, we're going to take a little detour. I want to go just drive by this place and look at the neighborhood. And wouldn't you know it, out in the lawn, there was a sign that says for rent and a phone number on it. Kind of knew right then and there we might have found our next home. I called the phone number and didn't get a company, didn't get an answering machine, didn't get a phone tree with choosing a number to go to somebody's desk. A real life human being picked up the phone. His name's Eric. And Eric and I had a little chat, and Eric said, can you come by Friday afternoon and look at the place? I said, yeah, I can come by. That'd be great. And so we set a time, and we visited the home. And as we left, Laura and I looked at each other, and we just kind of chuckled and said, this is the place. I want this place. Let's make this place work. Now, we still don't know if Eric had other interested parties or had shown the home to others. But that afternoon, we exchanged emails, and by the next morning, there was a lease in my email. And, well, within a day or two, we were signing the lease on this place. See, the house was here all along. We just had to get really clear and declare what it is we wanted to experience. Sometimes we had to get clear on what we didn't want to get clear on what we did want. And then with that declaration, what came through is exactly what was perfect. July is about freedom. And most of what gets called freedom is a sense of freedom from something, what we don't want. We want to be free from the fear because we don't want fear. We want to be free of an old identity because we don't want it to be that anymore. We want to be free of a home, or we want to be free of a job. We want to be free from a story that no longer fits us. And that's real. It matters. But it's truly only half the story. Remember, our founding fathers, with the Declaration of Independence, were not only declaring freedom from a king, they were declaring what they wanted a chance of freedom to be. The freedom to build. The freedom to govern themselves. The freedom to create something new. See, freedom from is the doorway that you walk through. Freedom to is the house you build once you're through the doorway. And that same is true for us. If we want to be free from an old story, The story is the doorway. The freedom to think a new thought creates, well, an experience of love without condition. It's what we're experiencing in this new home. A new story, a new chapter. See, I believe that's what freedom, this 250th anniversary, is quietly and patiently inviting us all to become. It's inviting us towards liberty, toward everything that is still arriving in our lives. And so this past week, I've been working on a little something I'd like to share with you. Now, I'll be sure to include this in this month's newsletter and a link to a copy of this if you'd like to read it in more detail. And you may find you want to sign your name to the bottom of this. You may find that you want to wait a little while to sign your name to this. It's called the Declaration of Interdependence. And it goes like this. The unanimous declaration of the connected citizens of the earth. When, in the course of human evolution, it becomes necessary for the people of this world to dissolve the outdated political, economic, and technological systems that have divided them, a decent respect to the opinions of humankind requires that we declare the causes which impel us to separate from the old order and chart a new path forward for global civilization. We declare that the foundation of all just civilization rests upon the recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. Human dignity is not a privilege granted by states, nor is it a metric to be calculated by algorithms. Neither is it a commodity to be bought and sold in the marketplace. It is a sacred, inviolable essence of every individual, demanding absolute respect, protection, and fulfillment. To live with dignity requires not merely the absence of oppression, but the presence of conditions that allow every human mind and body to flourish, including access to truth, connection, a thriving biosphere, and complete autonomy over one's physical and digital self. When the structures of society systematically strip humanity of this baseline dignity, reducing individuals to data points, disposable labor, or casualties of ecological collapse, the moral contract between the people and their institutions is shattered. We hold these truths to be self-evident and fundamentally renewed for our time, that all human beings are created equal, endowed with inherent dignity, and connected by a shared biosphere. They possess certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of well-being, digital sovereignty, and a clean, regenerative environment. To secure these rights, governments, economic institutions, and technological platforms are instituted among humans, deriving their just powers solely from the transparent, ongoing consent of the governed. Whenever any form of governance, corporate structure, or autonomous system becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right and the duty of the people to alter or abolish it and institute new frameworks grounded in global cooperation, open science, and human empathy. The history of the modern era is a history of systemic failures, unmitigated corporate overreach, and institutional gridlock, all establishing an absolute tyranny over the lives, minds, and futures of global citizens. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. The dominant powers have surrendered the health of our planet to short-term financial interests, permitting the destruction of ecosystems, the collapse of biodiversity, and the destabilization of global climate. This environmental exploitation is actively compounded by an unchecked digital infrastructure where massive data centers consume finite resources, spiking carbon emissions and water depletion to fuel private monopolies. By failing to respect ecological boundaries, the current order has effectively disposed all future generations of a stable, livable Earth. Simultaneously, a small cabal of technological conglomerates has established an unprecedented dominion over human thought. They have deployed opaque algorithmic systems designed to manipulate public discord, to erode cognitive liberty, and harvest personal data, transforming human behavior into a mere raw commodity without explicit consent. Through the unregulated spread of weaponized disinformation and AI-generated fabrications, they have systematically dismantled our shared reality, fragmented public trust, and erected pervasive surveillance networks that profile, track, and restrict human freedom rather than empower it. This dual crisis of ecological and technology has exacerbated a profound economic and human rights emergency. Modern capitalism has accelerated an unprecedented concentration of wealth, allowing billions of people to languish without access to basic healthcare, clean water, or secured housing, while a fraction of humanity accumulates infinite capital. As autonomous and generative artificial intelligence are deployed rapidly to displace human labor, no social safety nets or restraining systems have been established, threatening the survival of workers worldwide. Furthermore, by gating vital current financial, educational, and medical resources behind digital and economic barriers, the current system enforces a global apartheid that it permanently marginalizes the vulnerable, while multinational corporations manipulate international law to evade accountability. We, therefore, the connected citizens of the world, appeal to the supreme judge of the universe for the rectitude of our intentions. Do, in the name and by the authority of the collective human conscience, solemnly publish and declare that the people of this earth are, and of right ought to be, free, interconnected, and self-determining. We declare ourselves absolved from all allegiance to systems that profit from planetary destruction, digital enslavement, and systemic inequality. With a firm reliance on human solidarity, decentralized truth, and ecological science, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor to build a sustainable, equitable, and truly free future. I get it. It's a lot of words. And sometimes it sounds kind of scary. But we are the ones, dear folks. We are the ones who have made the promise to make a change. We are the ones. And I invite you to join me as we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor to build a sustainable, equitable, and truly free future. In New Thought, we like to say we believe in a world that works for all. I like to envision a world where borders are irrelevant, where everyone is aware there is more than enough food and shelter and resources for all, and all have access to it. New Thought is a positive spirituality that sees the divine in us, teaches the creative power of thought, and helps us transform our lives while contributing to a brighter future. I invite you this holiday season, this month as we focus on freedom, to consider, where must I declare my freedom and move in ways that allow the world around me to catch up to that declaration? Declaration of Interdependance reminds us that deeply we are one. And together, as one, there's nothing we can't accomplish. Now is the time. Now is the time for us, in the language of New Thought, to treat and move our feet. To do the prayer work, to do the work in consciousness, and allow that to inspire and inform how we move our feet. Perhaps we use AI a little less. Perhaps we promote a more just economic system by voting with our dollars. Perhaps we help to shift the prevailing political system by voting, even in the primaries. Perhaps we run for something, an office, or a city or town council. Perhaps we just write a letter or pick up the phone and call our congresspeople and representatives and say, we want change. We want a world that works for all. We want oneness. That freedom, that truth is already true. And now we let the world catch up with us. Thank you for your time and your consciousness. I love you. And I so look forward to being with you again soon. But until then, namaste.